Hello, everybody, and happy Christmas. You probably know that this is the podcast where sometimes we talk about horror, sometimes we talk about other things, and sometimes we swear. In a minute, you will be listening to a discussion of the movie Doctor Sleep, also touching on the movie The Shining, between Ian Winterton, Kirsty Warrow, and myself. I'm TD Velasquez, but as always, you can call me Dan. Now, this is our sort of Christmas episode. It hasn't actually gone to plan. We were going to include a nice Christmassy catch-up chat with our friend and frequent co-host, Dr. Stella Gaynor. Unfortunately, Stella was too busy to be involved in the main discussion, and also, unfortunately, that part of the recording has been hopefully temporarily lost in the nethersphere that is the Zoom cloud recording service. So, once we retrieve that, I'll hopefully put it out as a podcast, hopefully quite soon. But for tonight, you'll just have the main discussion. Sorry about that, Stella. We love you, and we know that you're having a busy Christmas period, so all the best with it and good luck. Also, I'd like to say to everybody, greetings from COVID world. I don't know about you, but I've got COVID. My mum's got COVID. We're isolating over the Christmas period and not allowed to see anyone. I don't know if you're maybe feeling the same way or in the same situation. I feel particularly lucky that I have my mum to keep me company here, because it would be pretty dismal otherwise. I hope that you have been lucky, and if you are on your own this Christmas time but you're listening to this podcast, I hope that is somehow a help to you. I would say God bless the vaccine. My mum and I are both fully jabbed and boosted and everything, and our only symptoms are tiredness and crankiness. So I would suggest that indicates, at least in my corner of the world, that things have moved on for the much better over the last year or so. But nobody wanted a Christmas like this, I'm sure, and my thoughts are with you all. The other thing I want to say before we get into the main discussion is that we normally end an episode with the recommendations that we have for available horror entertainment at the moment. Unfortunately, this time we just forgot to record that bit, so we won't have any of those that you'll hear in the episode. But if you go to our website, andnowpodcast.com, and look at the show notes, or you see the details in your own podcast player, then I'll put some recommendations on there and links to the films that we discuss in the episode. Alright, everybody, well, best wishes for this Christmas, and you'll hear from us in the new year. Enjoy the episode, and here's the theme tune.
Now the podcast starts.
So, dear listener, welcome back. Stella's left us now, God bless her, and we're here to discuss, between the three of us, myself, Ian and Kirsty, the movie Doctor Sleep from 2019. And of course, I think we'll touch on the film that it is a sequel to, 1980's The Shining, and probably a few other things as well. Ian and I had not seen Doctor Sleep prior to this. Kirsty, I think you'd seen it before. Have you watched it again for the recording?
Yes. Well, mostly.
Right, but it is quite a long film. It exists in two versions, both of which are very long. The theatrical version is 2.5 hours, and the version I watched was the director's cut, which is 3 hours.
I watched that as well.
I tried to watch, and
right.
I didn't get all the way through. So
okay. So the version you'd previously seen, was that the director's cut or the theatrical one?
The theatrical cut.
Okay, so are you able to kind of mention things that stood out to you as different in the two cuts, or was it not anything major?
There were moments that I thought in the director's cut that I watched this week that felt a bit baggy, and I did wonder, and certainly there were moments that didn't stick out in my head from watching the theatrical cut. So to be honest, I'm not sure.
Okay, sure. No, fair enough. I watched the first 10 minutes of both versions.
Yeah.
And one major difference is that the director's cut has the chapter intertitles, which the theatrical one doesn't.
Right.
So there's
that's interesting, because I that was one thing I really liked.
Right.
The pace of it and the chapter titles.
And then it's just like bits and pieces. Well, it's in the opening, the only difference is, the first scene where you see young Danny, and he sees the ghost from room 237 of the Overlook.
Yeah.
The old lady in the bath. In the theatrical cut, you can just see her behind the curtain as a scary shadow, but in the extended version, she steps out from behind the curtain. So I suspect it's lots of things like that. It's just kind of moments within scenes that make them longer. We should probably do a little bit of an introduction to the film, though, in case people have not seen it or don't know anything about it. So I'm sure we all have different reasons to be attracted to wanting to watch it. I suspect, Kirsty, the reason that you might have wanted to watch it was that it's written and directed by Mike Flanagan. Doing his kind of patented "I'm the best Stephen King adapter in the room" thing that he's now been doing for a few years. So he's, we talked about his work quite a lot on this podcast. The Haunting of Hill House we talked about, and recently, not on the podcast, but in real life, you were recommending to me Midnight Mass, which is currently on Netflix, and I haven't been able to watch that yet. But he's
brilliant.
Do you think it's brilliant as well, Ian?
Yeah.
No,
it's I loved it, to be honest.
Right.
I liked it more than, I guess I liked Hill House a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't quite think Hill House stuck the landing, and I think Midnight Mass, I liked every episode, and then I wasn't disappointed at the end, which I'm beginning to think, for Mike Flanagan joint, is it makes it quite unique. But that's
so we have real compliments and backhanded compliments there. There we go.
Yes.
When this movie came out, I was quite interested in seeing it, but didn't end up being able to. But I did see the brief re-release of The Shining in cinemas that happened just before it instead. Kirsty, did you see it at the cinema?
No, I didn't. This is very much a pandemic kind of watch for me.
All right.
So I think I'd watch. I don't think I'd. It's funny you sort of said, kind of interested in it because of Mike Flanagan. I wasn't, to be honest. As you know, listeners might remember, I didn't watch Hill House when it first hit Netflix. I only watched it because we were going to do an episode. And I knew about Mike Flanagan. I knew he was a kind of presence in horror, but not one that I sort of, kind of paid much attention to. So I think I watched Dr. Sleep, having watched Hill House, and having become much more aware of him, which is, I think, was the primary draw. It's not that I'm going to say something quite sacrilegious. Like The Shining never, it was never my film. It was, people talk about, The Shining, it scared the shit out of me, and I never kind of found that in it. So I wasn't necessarily kind of just drawn to it because it was, sequel to The Shining either. It was much more because, it's like from the trailers, it seemed like an interesting kind of development of the story, and by that point I was kind of more impressed by the idea that it was a Mike Flanagan joint, if you like.
Mm.
Yeah. So so that's why. So I watched it, I think, when it came on to Sky Movies last year, which I think it was sort of, yeah, kind of late spring, early summer, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't see it at all when it came out.
So yeah, it has this weird thing that it's the sequel to The Shining, and it was marketed as such, but also it's a very different film, and it may or may not appeal as a sequel. Its appeal may lie elsewhere. Obviously, The Shining is an iconic movie. Stanley Kubrick's 1980 adaptation of Stephen King's book, which I think it was published in 1977. I'm not too sure about that, so please correct me if anybody knows. And I think everybody has an opinion on it. I suspect everybody listening to this will have seen it. I don't think it's one of those really important movies.
Are we going to do a spoiler warning?
Well, I don't think we need to do a spoiler warning for The Shining, but I think we should avoid spoilers for Doctor Sleep for a little while.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for us to set out our relationship, each of our relationships to The Shining, before we talk about Doctor Sleep. So, I don't necessarily find it the most frightening film ever made. I think it's a very interesting film. Ian, I think you love it to bits, so maybe you should talk about The Shining for a moment.
Well, again, I do like it a lot, but a bit like Kirsty was saying, I think I like it more. I do genuinely find it really scary. It does something. It's what it's one of the things I'm always chasing, is that feeling when a film follows you around for sort of hours, if not days afterwards. So when you go upstairs or when you go to the toilet, or when you get up in the middle of the night, suddenly you feel like you're being followed. That to me is just a sign of a good, scary movie. And The Shining did that. The Exorcist did that. The Witch is a recent example that did that to me. They tend to be the films that I want to go back and watch. And The Shining, I do think it's a masterpiece. What I'm down on is I'm quite down on Kubrick as a director in general.
Oh, okay.
And I do like lots of his films, but I also think, we'll come on to Stephen King's attitude to the Shining film. But one thing, King's criticism of Kubrick sort of chimes with me, that he thinks too much and feels too little. And I often think that's spot on for Kubrick there. That I like movie. I am a bit more of a Spielbergy kind of person, I guess. And I like emotion in things.
Sure.
And I love The Shining because I think it does, the emotion it has is terror, if nothing else. And it's got all the genius things that Kubrick does. Like, there's not a single thing wrong with a single frame of that movie. It's absolutely,
apart from the opening shot. I've always said this. I think when I first watched The Shining when I was a teenager, it's got that amazing opening shot swooping over the lake and coming close to the car driving along. And I think they've corrected this now in the versions that have recently been released. They've digitally airbrushed it out. But like the first thing you see in the entire film is, as the camera swoops towards the mountainside, you see the shadow of the helicopter that's filming.
Oh, right.
It's like, no. Admittedly, it's an amazing shot. And,
Yeah.
They couldn't do much about it.
No. They shot enough of it, though. Didn't they loan half of that to Blade Runner? Well,
that's true. Yeah.
They just shot hours and hours of it. And they managed to stick the bit with the helicopter. But anyway.
But
yeah. No, but I would say I wouldn't want every movie to be like The Shining. But I think I can handle The Shining being this cold, perfect, because it is cold. It's cold in so many different ways. It's emotionally quite cold, apart from the screaming. And it's quite an unforgiving movie. But yeah, so It's not. It's never my. It's never the first. If someone says, "What's your favorite scary movie?" I never say The Shining because I love The Exorcist. that's and that to me is almost the opposite of The Shining in lots of ways, because that is all emotion and all good versus evil. And The Shining's it's clinical, isn't it? Like a lot of Kubrick's movies, it's it's admirable rather than enjoyable.
Yeah, it's
but
all designed.
The Shining, I would say, like 2001, gets above the just being admirable, not enjoyable, and is really enjoyable. But for me, he doesn't often get there. Apart from Spartacus, which I fucking love Spartacus.
Well, I've still seen a distressingly small amount of Kubrick films, so I can't comment on all of them. I've never seen Spartacus. Kirsty, what do you think of The Shining then?
Similar to Ian, really. I mean, I think as a horror fan, it left me cold in terms of the actual kind of horror, being scared of it. But I think it's a fantastically executed film. I think it's really intriguing. I love the, kind of the realization that, kind of often happens kind of after you've watched or after several watches about the kind of, how well constructed it is, in this kind of the hotel as a kind of labyrinthine space, and how the spaces don't, make sense kind of in reality. There's like kind of famous kind of tracking shot of Danny on the little trike thing, which can't make sense. I love the kind of the sort of low level uncanniness that the film kind of has kind of constantly in the background, like them watching the TV and the TV's not plugged in, and all of that kind of stuff I really, really enjoy.
It's kind of like House of Leaves, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it is a tremendous film. It's just not, and it has so much about it that's iconic. I don't feel the need to kind of come back to it very often, because it's like so much of kind of iconic horror. I think that if you're just kind of if you kind of exist within cinema culture, cinema fandom, that you don't need to, because it's just sort of this kind of ever-present thing, really. And if I may sort of segue into a discussion of Dr. Sleep,
sure.
That there's just this kind of way that the film, even from its outset, kind of very squarely says this is a continuation of Kubrick's vision in many ways. Because of the kind of matching of the set design and the camera work and the casting, so that they kind of the casting kind of calls back to the original casting of the film as well. That I kind of I'm not sure which essayist talked about it. There's an video essay on YouTube about I'm gonna say Nerdwriter, but I'm not sure if it is weaponized intertextuality.
Right.
That kind of that quite a lot of what kind of contemporary cinema does, particularly in a kind of postmodern way, is kind of deliberately kind of rely on our associations with other products, so that kind of we're taking all of the the kind of pleasures and the feelings associated with that thing and now transferring it to this other thing. Which I think is, very clearly what happens in Dr. Sleep,
right?
Because we have just the callback to all these kind of key moments, and So I'm not sure, that the film is. So I didn't want to get into big pronounced judgments already, but I'm not sure the film is necessarily as strong on its own, but as a sort of companion piece to this already iconic film, then I think it works very well. And as a somebody interested in film and kind of interested in the original film, I found it interesting from that perspective, enjoyable from that perspective.
Can I just ask, of all three of us, have any of us read the book The Shining or the book Dr. Sleep?
Not Dr. Sleep. I read The Shining many years ago.
Yeah, I think I read The Shining many years ago when I was just solidly reading Stephen King.
Right. I haven't read The Shining or indeed any of King's novels. I've read some of his short stories, but I did see the 90s TV miniseries of The Shining, so I know the kind of plot differences. And all I'll say about The Shining, I kind of echo what both of you said, but in terms of it being cold, it's a lot warmer, let's say, than that miniseries is. That miniseries, which tries to be kind of true to the characterizations and things, you feel a lot less than you do just from watching, Shelley Duvall crying. So, and I think that the art of that movie, well, there's a lot of art, a great deal of it is in her performance, actually.
I've got Shelley Duvall written down as a big note in that of all the things Dr. Sleep really fails on, Danny's mum. Nothing against that actress, but she's nothing compared to Shelley Duvall.
Oh, interesting. That's
like Shelley Duvall's amazing. She's like, if you take Shelley Duvall out of The Shining, and I just don't think the Dr. Sleep mum is. She doesn't do anything. She doesn't seem like Shelley Duvall at all. She's probably she's a perfectly fine actress. I'm just saying in terms of the way she comes across and the way she's written.
Well, she's only in flashbacks, isn't she? I was totally impressed with her, actually. The actress is called Alex Esso, and she's basically doing an impression of Shelley Duvall. And I thought she did that wonderfully well.
I would disagree. I think Shelley maybe it's just because Shelley Duvall is so unique that of all. It's just. We'll come on to. I guess we've got to at some point come on to. Are we in the spoilers section yet?
Well, before we go to spoilers, let's just all say if we recommend the film. I think Kirsty's already said that if you know and like The Shining, it's a recommendation.
Yeah, I think if you don't know The Shining, you're going to be pretty lost. I think. I'm not sure it works as a standalone.
Okay.
I would almost say the opposite. Yeah, it doesn't work as a standalone. At the same time, it's probably less offensive if you don't know. To me, less offensive as a movie if you don't know the original. So you could pick up that the plot works and this is the tone, and the tone is nothing like the bloody Shining.
Yeah,
well, it's my main problem.
Into kind of spoiler territory. I think that certainly.
Yeah.
That if what essentially is the kind of, again, it's a very long film, isn't it? The kind of essentially what is kind of the end of Act 1 and Act 2, that works, that has the potential to work very kind of clearly by itself, I think. But taking it where physically the film takes it in Act 3, that's something that can only have relevance and only have the dramatic weight if you see it as part, kind of part of as a sequel, as a continuation.
Yeah. There is that, but you could view the whole thing and the backstory is all clear. You could watch Doctor Sleep. Yeah. I'd rather live in a world where you don't watch Doctor Sleep and you do watch The Shining.
Right.
But if you were to find yourself, like I bet lots of people never watched The Shining and watched Doctor Sleep, and then would have been weirded out when they actually did watch The Shining, because it's a totally different film, tonally so different.
That's kind of making about kind of weaponized intersexuality. Is that kind of sort of sense that the film, they clearly at some point made the choice to kind of go after that same vision that Kubrick had, so that it plays as a direct sequel rather than an adaptation of the sequel to The Shining, and to kind of, establish those things on its own terms. It doesn't. And so, I kind of think that a lot of the intended value in the film is, that it sits alongside The Shining in the way that the viewer's meant to consume it. Yeah. Meant to understand it, because again, it's I don't want to go in spoiler territory, but we were talking about casting before. There's the other casting that, you know, is so significant in terms of how that character is meant to be read and meant to be interpreted as who he is and who he is as an actor, you know, kind of playing a version or the same character in the same way.
Yeah, it's very difficult to talk about without going into spoilers. So let's go.
It really is because all the things we talk about would be we'd go back to the movie The Shining and we'd talk about how they see him on one level and how they see him in comparison as a sequel. I think the main problem with it is they set themselves a sort of impossible square to circle, if that's or circle to square, in that they were trying to be a sequel to a film while pleasing Stephen King. They're trying to make a sequel to a film he hated.
Which seemed really odd. And didn't Stephen King say that he really liked Doctor Sleep, the film? So just a really odd thing to try and do anyway. And I certainly was intrigued by, you know, his response to it, particularly with how it leans on Kubrick's vision of it.
I suppose this is, I can say this in non-spoilers. I suspect that, you know, there was an early meeting in the pre-production of the film where they thought, look, this is a film of Doctor Sleep. And the novel Doctor Sleep is a sequel to the novel The Shining. Is the film Doctor Sleep going to be a sequel to the film The Shining? Because if it isn't, people expect it to be, or they will go, why isn't it? And it, you know, and ultimately, it probably makes more sense for them to just kind of stay consistent with the iconography, even though the intentions of the film Doctor Sleep narratively and with characters and things is very different to the movie. But at the end of the day, you know, I mean, they could have made it a sequel to the 90s miniseries, but
I would have preferred it if they'd remade The Shining and then made Doctor Sleep.
It's funny actually. I was thinking actually, particularly this time when I was watching the kind of director's cut, is that, you know, and again, particularly after watching Midnight Mass, so I'm hoping that Ian will agree with me, feels very Stephen King. There's so much about that kind of the DNA of that feels very, very Stephen King, that I was kind of watching Doctor Sleep this time going, you know, I would have quite happily have watched, you know, a television series that was The Shining and then Doctor Sleep, and that it had, you know, the kind of scope for, you know, kind of drawing out some of those, you know, because it's got such a, that's the other thing, it's got such a massive cast, and even though the runtime is long, that some of those characters and the way that the relationships develop, I think particularly kind of like the connection between Dan as he is when he's older, and Abba kind of gets a bit, you know, kind of skipped over. It just sort of seems to be sort of taken for granted. And I would love to have seen, again, non-spoilers because it's earlier in the film, I'd love to have seen a bit more time, or spent a bit more time with Dan as the orderly. In the hospital, because I thought that's actually a really interesting kind of space to spend time with him and sort of, you know.
But also that sequence is why the film is called Doctor Sleep. He's only Doctor Sleep when he's working in the hospice, helping people go to sleep. So, well, just let's go into spoilers in a second because we've got half an hour. But I'll just say, my non-spoiler recommendation would be much more wholehearted than either Ian or Kirsty's. I think it does stand alone, or I suspect it would. I can't say that it does because obviously I've seen The Shining, but I suspect it would stand alone. It's a nice piece of storytelling. I thought it was a really entertaining movie. Yes, it's really incongruous with The Shining, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad that they did kind of go back to those set designs and certain of those elements, because it was just good to see them again, but on its own terms as a story about, basically it's been described by others as basically a superhero film. And to me it was Super 8, wasn't it? Not Super 8, Sense 8. It was a lot like that. I haven't seen that.
Okay.
It was there were spooky psychics everywhere. Or it was The Chrysalids by John Wyndham, if you want to go that far back. It was here were some psychics and they occasionally meet up. and there are some baddie psychics who eat you if you're a psychic, and that's all fine. And what it is nothing like the tone of The Shining.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But
so ultimately,
I think
a stupid thing to try and do.
I would say. I don't know, but I think the appeal of those stories is they're basically stories of they're about bullies and they're about people who use their powers to fight back against bullies. And I think maybe I'm getting more simple-minded as I get older, but a lot of the movies that I enjoy could be described as thus. I mean, I think revenge movies, that's always what it's about.
Yeah.
And I think movies tell us that the bully will always lose, whereas real life shows us that the bully will always win. I think if you look at the world of politics and things, there's lots of people who are using unfair advantages that they have, whether monetarily or whatever, and getting away with abusing their power and their abilities, and there's nobody to put them back in their box. These kind of superhero type narratives.
So if you talk about Boris Johnson or Stephen King, but
well, I'll just leave that as an open question. But you know, and these stories show us people coming along to put those villains back in their boxes. That's the appeal of them. And I think, as on that level, it was satisfying because I thought the bullies were good and interesting, and I liked the heroes and cared about them.
No, I'd still say to everybody, go and watch it because there's lots of good stuff in it. I'd probably say, if you haven't seen The Shining, then go and watch The Shining and then don't watch this. Or if you really just want to watch this and it's more your kind of thing and you haven't seen The Shining, then you probably enjoy it a lot more if you haven't seen The Shining, because it constantly makes you go, there was just something a bit, I don't know, like, have you seen Ready Player One? There was moments like that.
Yeah.
Ready Player One, when they go to the Overlook and that, and I was like, this is sacrilege. And there was a slight moment of that. I kept getting those sort of moments. Like, this is not The Shining by Kubrick. It's totally different. You're just doing a Jive Bunny mega mix of his bloody shot, to do a really up to date reference there. But,
okay, so we are definitely in spoiler section now.
Yeah.
So let's go for it. Kirsty, what were you going to say?
Sorry, which one of us?
Kirsty. Sorry.
Yeah.
Henry Thomas.
Yes.
Henry Thomas.
Playing Jack Nicholson. Yes.
God bless him. I mean, I one thing that I've, again, kind of come to, I mean, okay, Bly Manor aside, really appreciate about Mike Flanagan's work is Henry Thomas. Just because, obviously, Elliot, obviously, but, kind of his I want to say range, because I'm not sure that's the right word, but he just seems like such a dependable kind of presence in a lot of Mike Flanagan stuff. Bly Manor, notwithstanding. That, kind of, and I've really kind of enjoyed, and I think I'm on the lead up to watching Doctor Sleep. I think I was aware that he was in it, but I'd forgotten by the time I'd seen it, and I found myself being really confused by him as Jack Nicholson, as
Jack Torrance.
Exactly. Because it was just.
I was going, is he supposed to be Jack Torrance or is he supposed to be the barman?
It was uncanny. He just seemed to be Jack Nicholson in that movie. And there was part of me just to begin with, I was like, what is this? Is this CGI? Is this, kind of digital resurrection? What? And then I realized that it was him. And I was just like, oh my God, that was a moment of kind of pleasure. I
disagree. I thought, I was like, oh my God, they actually tried to show Jack Nicholson and it just did not work for me. No. It just didn't. It just didn't. I don't know. They should have spent loads of money on CGI.
I feel like if they had done the CGI thing, we would be complaining just as much, if not more. And I also think, right, I'll put my cards on the table. I've only seen The Shining twice in my life. And it's in many ways it's kind of a distant memory for me, which is what it also is for Danny in the movie.
Yeah,
it's something that haunts him, and therefore I was quite happy to look at Henry Thomas and Alex Esso and the chap whose name I can't remember, who plays Scatman Crothers' character, and go, oh yeah, that's them, because they just seem to be them. I was happy to go with that. I knew it wasn't them. I knew it wasn't those actors, but I was happy that they were there. I mean, Halloran had exactly the right vibe, I thought, and didn't seem to be doing an impression of Scatman Crothers at all, but just was it.
I know what you're saying, in that they couldn't have just CGI'd everybody. That would have looked ridiculous. Yeah. This is another example of why they shouldn't have made the film. I think the whole problem is I just think from its inception, it was a sequel to something that doesn't exist. Like the Mike Flanagan version of The Shining doesn't exist. So it was a sequel to something that doesn't exist. Yeah. So he should have made the bloody Shining and then made this, and it would have been a brilliant bloody series, or a bloody, or it would have been a brilliant and bold. It would have pissed off the Kubrick purists, but then it would have been like, no, I'm not using the iconography. I'm not using that. It's not a sequel to the Kubrick Shining. It's an adaptation of King's 2 books.
Yeah,
and that would have been brilliant. This is like a weird mixture of, it was an impossible task they set themselves in a way.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have to say, I do agree with you on that front. I do, like I said, I would have happily watched a television series of both books. But in terms of authorship, it's such an odd beast, isn't it? Because kind of Flanagan has become distinctive of his own right, for doing particular things. Kubrick, then this particular vision is distinctive, and he's also, he's bringing that on, and also he's managing to somehow satisfy Stephen King in all of this as well. So, kind of.
I think the fact he's satisfied Stephen King is the biggest warning, sign ever, because Stephen King seems to have, God bless him, because he's written some amazing things, but he seems to have particularly bad takes when it comes to, I mean, I don't know. I find his novels so overwritten and long, and I think that's why they make good films, because they get to the essence of them and they cut out all the flab that he puts in, and they get to the core of his idea, which is often genius. But when you've got him involved, going, oh, I'm quite pleased with this, that generally means this is going to be a bit shit. And he hated one of the best filmmakers ever making The Shining, and that's just bad taste. He should have just gone, it's not my book, but it's a fucking amazing film. I mean, he always said, like, Kubrick's version ends in ice and my version ends in fire, and and it's like burning the hotel down is such a bloody boring thing to do compared to doing something more psychological and interesting. But this, now we're in the spoilers territory. This the ending of this Doctor Sleep is the ending of The Shining, the novel. So it's almost like they've done half of what they could maybe have done if they'd just gone to town and made The Shining. Yeah, and then made Doctor Sleep if they wanted to.
I think the thing that pleased King was that they basically went back and restored the bits of The Shining that Kubrick had excised, including the ending. And the themes of alcoholism and stuff like that, and kind of got it all in there, so that in a way he feels like his movie has now been, his book has now been faithfully made. I mean, I think the idea is really that I got from what I read was that he would have been happy with the film The Shining if it had those elements still in it, because he does recognize that the art that went into the making of that movie and the performances and everything. But he just felt so hurt by the fact that these kind of key elements had been removed from it that he couldn't see past that. And now that they've been put back in the movie of Doctor Sleep, he's able to look at the film of The Shining and actually go, yeah, actually, that's pretty good. But prior to this point, he was too insulted or too wounded by what happened to be able to see that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the other thing though, there were massive problems with the film as well, I would argue. Like, okay, let's take the Traveling Wilbury fucking. I'd say they reminded me of Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark, but I fucking love that film, and I don't really want to soil it with this bunch of. Are these the least scary vampires ever?
Yeah.
I mean, I said to you before, you know, it was like a sequel to the fucking Lost Boys, but that's an insult to the Lost Boys in a way. These, I mean, that awful villain in the hat.
Well, that was going to be my first question. You're not the first person who's said that that character was awful. We're talking about Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat. Yeah. I thought she was great. Actually,
well, she's a brilliant actress. I love her in June with other things, but I did not like her character.
Right, okay.
and I also they were right. A drunk and a kid managed to take them all down. These fucking immortals in about 5 seconds flat.
Well, the thing is,
there was barely any jeopardy. There was the whole thing was just all you need is a couple of guns and bang, they're all fucking dead.
Yeah, and
it was just bad plotting. It's a 3-hour fucking film. 3-hour film, and all the bad guys get taken out. Like, you know, you just click your fingers and they're all gone.
That's a really good scene, though. I mean,
it's a good scene if they'd taken one of them out and then maybe like, oh my god, we did it. Oh my god, it's all gone wrong now. Let's run away. But they did it, and it fucking worked and succeeded, and everyone died.
Well, yeah,
they all died. I mean,
I think the problem.
What's his name from The Walking Dead had to Fear the Walking Dead had to blow his head off.
Yeah, there was.
But that to me would have been good, and also a reason why lots of them were still alive. Like, you know, that whole "you come at the king, you best not miss." They needed to miss a few times.
No, I understand. It was too easy. But it was also very satisfying because it was that thing of getting back at the bullies. I thought that was great. What I did reflect afterwards was that the movie should really have set out some kind of rules about these immortal people. How easy are they to kill? How do you kill them? What's the deal? Because it basically comes across that they are essentially immortal because of what they do. However, they're also incredibly mortal because any slight injury makes them dissolve.
There were vampires who didn't read the terms and conditions very well, did they? So, what kills you? Everything that kills normal people. What?
Except they can walk in the daylight. So, and they're not referred to as vampires.
No.
But
you know, so of Rose the Hat.
Go on, Kirsty.
So I mean, okay. Before I get into the defense bit, I absolutely kind of, you know, see the issue with the kind of, you know, sort of nomad kind of representation of, you know,
it was having a subtle dig at pagans, if you ask me.
You know, as
lady stuff.
Yeah, as part of, you know, the kind of, you know, again, kind of issues around the kind of carnivalesque, isn't it? And the kind of the outsider and all that. And I get that, and that's problematic. One of the reasons why I like Rosa Hat as an antagonist, although clearly not a well-drawn one, is that, you know, as a kind of female antagonist in horror, she's, you know, kind of relatively rare in that she isn't particularly sexualized, and her kind of monstrosity isn't located in, you know, kind of Barbara Creed's idea of, you know, kind of her femininity particularly her maternal qualities or anything. The fact that she's female is, kind of not intrinsic to her monstrosity. I absolutely get what Ian was saying in terms of the way in which those characters kind of come to an end, and the way in which she comes to an end is really unsatisfying and doesn't kind of feed into the idea of them being, as monstrous as they possibly could be. But I quite enjoyed her as a sort of distinctive female villain. And again, this is part of the reason where I think that actually, a television series would have done a better job of kind of characterizing those people, building the mythology around them, and making her into a more well-drawn and formidable kind of bad guy, if you like.
Did that feel very 90s to you? It felt like the cast of the craft had come out and were splitting around. Let's get some meditation and do. Oh, it's awful. I mean, and that's in the same universe as Kubrick's Shining. It just isn't, is it?
No, and I absolutely agree, it isn't. But I also think on this time round watching, and maybe I just because I tend to watch them the first time, I just watch a story and I don't really kind of think too much about stuff. But sort of seeing how that in many ways they're kind of a bit of an allegory for or metaphor for kind of child sexual predators. And the way in which they work together, and particularly the way that with, is it Annie Rattlesnake, whatever she's called? She existed, and kind of our introduction to them more formally in terms of what they do is sort of through her scene, and she's sort of set up as a kind of Little Red Riding Hood, hard candy type character, somebody who's kind of bringing justice to men who are preying on children or young kind of women, underage girls. And how she is just at that kind of transitory time. She's not she doesn't have any value to them because she's too old, and so she's able to become one of them. I thought that was kind of quite a kind of reasonably interesting way of introducing.
That was one thing that made no sense. It was so she's if you can't beat them, join them. Like, I have dedicated my life to hunting down sexual predators, but when a bunch of them come along and offer me an extended lifespan, do you know what? I'm going to go and kill kids with you.
But then they kind of.
I thought she was going to have something more complex, like, do you know what? I don't want to kill kids. I'm kind of anti-killing kids. I've been established as anti-killing kids. What are you? No, I'm just a bad guy, and then I'm going to say kill somebody and die. It's bollocks.
I know what you're saying there, Ian, but to be fair, she's not established as anti-killing kids. She's a person who has no qualms with exploiting people who prey on her, but she does not do anything to stop them, or to stop other. I know that, like that guy that we see try to prey on her.
It looks like she has been doing like you said, the hard candy thing. She's been to catch a predator.
To each of those individuals.
Basically going, you think you're meeting a young girl. And that's my excuse for killing you. So she obviously fucking hates paedophiles. And then she joins a bunch of them.
But she takes their money as well.
Well, I suppose, but there's so many things that just don't hang together.
It's not really explained to her what she's signing up for, is it? And then by the time which she's signed up for it, it's too bloody late.
Yeah. You could the scene where they turn her is.
Well, you could have all that, but we needed to see it.
Yeah.
She's a pointless character to set up like that because she's set up to be a differentiated character.
Yeah.
And then she is not. She does not have a storyline. She just becomes part of the crowd.
Yeah. And again, with the television kind of runtime, she could have been, kind of much more clearly.
Yeah. Or just don't bother with her.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, or have her being, if we need the intro to this is what these people do, have her being the person who says, no thanks, I don't like killing kids. And then she gets a steam eaten. Or there's just so many. The more I think about this film, the more the flaws they're legion. They're all over the place. and there'd been a lot, and they'd all be a lot less if it wasn't a sequel to The Shining. Like, it feels tonally, it feels a bit cheesy for my taste, but I could buy that if that's its tone. Fine, that's your tone, you've gone for it. But if you've chosen that tone and you're trying to be a sequel to The fucking Shining, which has a different tone.
Yeah.
That's just silly. It's just silly. It's a film that didn't need to be made. I think it's almost the most pointless film since, I don't know, the Star Wars prequels or something. It didn't need to be made. It was just made to make a bit of bloody money, which is fine, I guess. But there were other films to watch, is what I would say. And Mike Flanagan's done far better things than this thing, which
like Midnight Mass.
well,
I really enjoyed it anyway.
Rewatching his like Gerald's Game on Netflix is amazing. Flanagan and King, have you seen that?
No.
Absolutely brilliant. You guys should watch it. But I've realised in Host and in Gerald's Game, his other sort of lower budget films, Midnight Mass pops up as as a book in both films, like as a fictional book.
Okay.
And then he's made Midnight Mass.
Right. Okay.
But Host and Gerald's Game are both really good. Pardon?
He didn't do Host.
Yeah, he did.
Host.
No, sorry, not Host. Hush.
Hush. Okay.
Right.
Oh yeah, I'm saying.
I was a bit confused there as well.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Although there are a lot of films called Host or The Host.
Yeah.
There's lots of films called Hush as well, as you'll find when you're trying to almost accidentally buy loads of shit films when you're trying to find it on and they're all on Netflix. Well, Hush and Gerald's Game is brilliant. I mean, that is a pure Stephen King setup. If you have a woman who's she's handcuffed to a bed by Gerald, her husband, part of a sex game, and then he has a massive heart attack, like in the first 5 minutes, and they're in a cabin in the woods, and but it's absolutely brilliant.
Hilarity and shoes.
It is hilarious. It really is. No, I mean the first antagonist. Lots of it's in her head, and it's how much of it is in her head and how much of it isn't.
Shut up.
No, but I'm just saying I'm not spoiling it, and then.
Well, you are now. I know I'm going to be questioning everything now.
Okay, well, no. Anyway, go and watch Gerald's Game because it's much better union of Stephen King and Mike Flanagan.
Okay.
Right.
Than I would argue Dr. Sleep is.
Okay. Well, we're coming to the end of our time now, so I think that's a comprehensive verdict on the film from Ian. My verdict is still I really enjoyed it. When they recreated the camera swoop over the lake on the way to the Overlook, I was delighted that I couldn't see the reflection of the helicopter, and therefore it pleased me entirely on every level. Kirsty, is there anything you'd like?
I missed the helicopter.
No, I mean we haven't really talked about Ewan McGregor, have we? I'm not sure this is his role really.
No.
Yeah.
I'm starting to wonder if Ewan McGregor's actually really, really boring.
Yeah.
Like I haven't liked anything he's done since Trainspotting.
Lots in his early career that I absolutely adored. And yeah.
He had a bit of energy.
Yeah. And I don't know. This film
has Obi-Wan Kenobi destroyed him.
Lead. And I also, again, whilst we're in spoiler territory, I don't know the ending of Dr. Sleep because I've not read the book, but I just kind of felt like little Danny deserved better. I've not read Dr. Sleep,
but I did read it. But all I know is this ending is, apart from Danny doesn't die as a little boy. Danny and his mum escape.
Yeah. But
at the end of The Shining, the boiler, the ploy with the boiler blows up, and Jack Torrance is killed inside.
Yeah.
When the whole place explodes, and like I said, it ends in fire, and Kubrick's ends in ice.
Yeah.
But the book ends like Dr. Sleep ends.
Yeah.
But in the synopsis of Dr. Sleep, I haven't read it. It sounds quite prosaic, but a lot of it does sound like it's Dr. Sleep doing his rounds, helping people to die
which
in,
is
in the hospice, which is just literally a 5-minute part of the movie.
was maybe half an hour in the director's cut. I thought it was a bit more to
Maybe.
it than that, and so and a couple of those scenes between him and the elderly patients were really nice.
Really
Mm.
And I did like Ewan McGregor in the movie. I thought that there was a subtle heartfulness to what he did. I enjoyed the scenes at the AA with Bruce Greenwood and all that. I thought there was a very nice underplayed intimacy between all of the characters, and it felt kind of real and gentle to me. Which I didn't think it was as good, but it reminded me of Flanagan's other stuff. That seems to be what he's really good at, and I liked all that.
He's really good at character. I mean, yeah, I did like the setup of Doctor Sleep. I liked the whole, this is Danny, he's a troubled. And there's another thing, like the woman and child that we see at the beginning with the vomit on the bed.
Yeah,
it's all very grim. And then later on, they're a sort of ghost. But is there yet another loose end? Did that woman die with her child? Or
well, I assume they did, because we see that.
It's just of all the things that are going on, all the plates he's juggling. He's not. He's not landing so many things for me. And then you've got a 90s Aerosmith video as the main baddies coming in. And it's just like,
Kirsty, you were saying that you thought Little Danny deserved better.
Yeah.
So do you think, exactly what did you mean by that? Do you think they should have got a better actor, or do you think the character needed to be developed in a stronger way?
No, just more about the ending, his ending.
Oh, okay.
Just felt like, hey, what a life, eh? What a life.
Well, my mind's gone blank. I can't remember what happens at the end. He
dies in sacrifice. I didn't actually mind the ending. I mean, obviously, because
of course he does.
Really good.
Yeah,
but he dies, and then I didn't mind lots of the little bits, and I quite like the ending. If all the stuff in between had been good,
I do appreciate that. For horror, that it works as an ending.
He'd had a rough life, hadn't he?
Well, I just feel for the kind of after what seems to be 40 years for the hotel still to fucking get him.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what?
I will say, actually, for about 10 minutes when they first go into the Overlook, I was like, "Oh, this is good. They're doing this well." And then there was a bit where they kind of went, and here's the bit with the blood coming down the corridor.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then they cut to Twat in the Hat, and she went, like, it's like she was from a different film.
Yeah. Well,
not from The Shining.
That scene just stood out to me as like, why is that even there? That scene is just there because somebody thought you have to have the elevator full of blood, even though that wasn't in the original book. And then
that's what I'm saying about kind of recognized intersexuality.
Yeah.
It's the film so consistently hooks up its own kind of experience with The Shining, so that you are, as a spectator, unable to forget that you're watching this film.
I just think that reinforces its hollowness, the hollowness of the whole enterprise. And if they, and I think the studio, if they just had the balls to go, do you know what? People are going to go, I can't believe you're remaking The Shining. But if they just fucking remade The Shining, they would have. It might not have been for everybody, but they would have had The Shining done like this, and then a sequel that fucking fitted it, and they would have had two massive films that a whole generation probably would have loved, and a whole bunch of old people who really like The Shining would have gone, "Oh, this is bollocks." But millions of people would have watched those two films, and Stephen King would have been happy, and they could have just adapted the two books, and it would have made Doctor Sleep better on its own terms than being a sort of half rice, half chips mix of,
Ian, I love half rice, half chips.
I'd say it's tried to please. It's tried to serve two masters, and it has completely failed to serve either.
Well,
the only people who really like it will be people that haven't seen The Shining.
And me.
Well, do you love it though?
No,
or do you just think it was all right? Because I think it was all right.
I really enjoyed it. I didn't have any problem with it, apart from maybe they should have explained what the vampire's powers were and how you kill them. But I completely went along for the ride.
A bullet.
Well, yeah, apparently. But I even like that because I just thought what I liked about the villains was that they thought they were powerful and unstoppable, and they weren't. Mm-hmm. That's what
that's bad writing, though. That's like. I mean, there's that bit at the end where they go, "Do you think she was right? Do you think there are others like that?" And he should have gone, "Well, did you see how easy they were to kill?" You're 13 years old, and I'm a drunk. We had them all.
Well, just to wrap up then, I will say that I know what both of you are saying. Ian, I think your theory that they should have just remade The Shining is less plausible to me than Kirsty's suggestion that it should have been a big Netflix series with both stories in it.
Well, maybe that's what they should have done.
Yeah,
I think people wouldn't be comparing like with like. If they'd done Shining, The Shining cycle or something, and just done both books.
Yeah, so
then they could have made it tonally, work tonally.
Yes, I think
that all that bollocks all that bollocks with the boxes in his head and the bad CGI in his head, and I find that stuff over explaining stuff. I hate it. It's the reason I walked out of Inception. There are 7 levels of dreaming. It's like, no, there aren't. It's fucking mad in there. It's a human brain. And all that compartmentalizing stuff, I just hated it. And that's in Stephen King's vision. And that's the sort of stuff Kubrick got rid of as well.
Well, Ian, I think that might be the last word that we'll have on Dr. Sleep then. Thank you very much. Your feelings are well articulated, as always, and thank you,
I've started hating this film more as the more I talk about it.
Yes, I started hating it more. Luckily, I didn't hate it to start with, so I only hate it 4%. I'll just say to you both, thank you very much, though, for this, and just Merry Christmas to you both and to your families. Listener, Merry Christmas to you too, and let us all think about our friend Howard, who's not here, but he'll be back on the podcast at some point. Merry Christmas.
Santa going to bring him a broadband connection.
That would be wonderful.
We should all chip in.
And you know what? I thought I'd end on a little bit of happy news. I was scrolling through my 5 the other day and discovered that Hannibal Season 1 is on there for free. And as someone who's just cancelled their Amazon Prime, I was delighted. It is only Season 1, but any free Hannibal is not to be sniffed at.
Well, I've still got Season 3 to look forward to. So.
Oh, you certainly have. I can say that now I've seen it. So.
Yeah.
Make a point.
Hope for the future.
This time, not me. It was Dan. Just.
Yes.
Yeah.
I almost went a whole episode. But no, you spoiled it right at the end, Dan.
Oh, sorry. But it just goes to show you've indoctrinated me, Kirsty. So.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, thank you very much for spending this time with us.
Well, if I don't speak to you before then.
Yes. Happy New Year to you too, sir. And Kirsty, same to you and to the listeners. Yes, it's going to be an interesting few days. And I get to return to human life on the 27th of December. Brilliant. The day after Boxing Day. The timing could not be better. So,
you can get. I know you love shopping, Dan. You can run out and go to all the sales.
Oh my God! Yeah, the January sales start on December 27th now.
Boxing Day sales, aren't they? I don't know. I hate shopping. I don't know you do. So I'm assuming you do too. You just don't strike me as a shopper.
I'm not a recreational shopper. It's true. But to you guys and to everyone who can hear this, I'd just like to say, if you can gather with any family members or loved ones, then count yourself lucky, because it's just me and my mum this year. And to any of you listening who are in the same boat, then I feel for you. All right, my friends, thank you so much, listeners. We'll be back in the new year. So keep an eye on our Twitter and our website, andnowpodcast.com. All right. We love you all very much. Thank you. And good night. Good night.
Good night.
You have been listening to And Now the Podcast Starts. Produced and released by Ambidextrous Solutions Limited. Presented by Kirsty Warrow, Ian Winterton, and T.D. Velasquez. Special thanks to Greg Hume for our original theme music and to Brian Gorman for our original artwork. All dialogue and music clips from films, TV shows, and trailers are used for the purposes of criticism in the spirit of fair dealing as defined in UK law and fair use as defined in US law. No copyright infringement is intended. Please visit our home on the web, www.andnowpodcast.com. More content and contact details, or visit our Facebook pages at @AndNowPod or at Lee Cushing Pod. Follow us on Twitter at @AndNowPodcast or at Lee Cushing Podcast. If you'd like to donate to us, please visit patreon.com/AndNowPodcast. And now the podcast stops.